is a story that we are following, one of the developing stories, and this is from our newscast last night. We'll continue to build on it, but this is a story that has been developing over the last week.
You know, it's to be living out there. You don't know. I didn't even know if she eat this morning.
Yasina Alamayu broke down this morning while telling CNC3 News about her 32-year-old sister, Amadi Alamayu, who is stranded in Syria with her 3 children, ages 4, 6 and 9. Photos emerged recently showing the inhumane conditions that the Trinidadian wives and children are made to endure at the Al-Hol refugee camp. Well, almost 2 weeks ago, Turkey launched an attack in northern Syria against the Kurdish People's Protection Units, prompting a vicious military response from Syrian government forces. However, last week, Turkey agreed to a temporary hold, which is set to expire on Tuesday. Yasina is begging the government to act before the battle resumes.
So at the end of the day, she is my sister, and through any lengths it takes me to get to my sister and bring her back home safe. I just plead into the government if they could please just push the help a little more faster.
Yasina could not say why her sister had gone to Syria, but says it is unfortunate that many are labeling them as terrorists.
She has just been an obedient wife, a good mother. She is, you understand? She's a good person. She's not no terrorist as they want to proclaim.
Yasina says government has been very accommodating to people from other countries and wants the same for nationals.
If we as Trinidadians accept the Venezuelans, we even put in Spanish on our boxes, you understand? Our labels are Spanish, our signs turning into Spanish as well. So if we are accommodating the Spanish people, why not taking our own citizens and bring them back home? Why we guys can't do that?
Meanwhile, Felicia Perkins Ferrara, who flew to the Middle East in January to rescue her sons from the Al-Roj camp, has been leading the repatriation efforts. She says up to yesterday she had communicated with the National Security Ministry.
Other countries are taking back their people. We are not asking them to go across there. We are willing to go. All we're just asking is for him to give us the okay to be able to do this.
Perkins Ferrara says her 2 sons have been able to live a normal and happy life since returning to TNT. She says they continue to go to school and participate in sporting activities. Bhavita Gopalchan, CNC3 News.
And that is a story that we are following this morning. And joining us on the line, Umar Abdullah, head of the Islamic Front. I think we lost Mr. Abdullah, but we're going to try to get him back in a short bit. But if you are just joining us, the story continues to take a number of twists and turns. This as we see that women are uniting. About 25 Trinidad and Tobago nationals remain in the Kurdish-run camp out in Turkey, and they fled Syria. And this is as they were simply being obedient wives, obedient Muslim wives, making their way to the war-torn nation, sympathetic to the cause of the Islamic State. But some of them are saying that they were tricked, duped, and they were simply following the orders of their husband. Joining us on the line at this time, Umar Abdullah, the head of the Islamic Front. Mr. Abdullah, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Hema. How are you? And good morning to all the viewers.
Good morning. I want to get straight into the story. Have you been in contact with any of these women who are at the Kurdish-run camp?
We have had communications with some of them. Presently, I'm waiting for a list of all the names of women and children who are present in these camps. I'm yet to get that list, but that list is being compiled as we speak.
We've been told that it's about 25 persons in all, including children, the majority being women and children. Can you confirm the number and whether or not they're all women and children?
Their number is way much higher than that. In one report, it was stated that there are about 90 women and children there in the camps. But what we have to pay attention to recently, the American forces, they moved out of Syria, and they were back in the Kurdish forces, which obviously would have left the Kurdish forces in a weaker position. And with that being done, and the Turkish attack on the Kurdish people, we saw a lot of the persons who were in those camps escaped. Now, we have to understand, in those camps, there are pro-ISIS individuals, right, who still support ISIS, and there are those who do not support ISIS. and they speak out against ISIS. All of the Trinidadians, women and children, they are in that position, speaking out against ISIS and not in support of ISIS and what they're doing. And what is happening in the camps, what was happening in the camps is that they were oftentimes attacked by those pro-ISIS followers. And in one case, one particular sister was badly beaten because of the utterances that she made regarding the ISIS regime. So it's a very serious situation, and I've been making this call since in 2017 for the government of this country to repatriate these people back to this country.
Now, there was one case where Felicia, I think it is, actually made her way to Syria and returned with her children. What is inhibiting the others from doing the same? Explain it as not that they're being held hostage.
It's just a matter of plain fortunate circumstances. There were a male individual who was captured by the ISIS on 2 occasions, and he escaped on 2 occasions, and he was able and managed to cross the border from Syria into Turkey and came back to Trinidad. The thing about it is that there's a language barrier. There's always the circumstances surrounding, whether or not you will be able to escape freely and not be captured and that sort of thing. And then there's also a lot of the way those skirmishes and fighting is taking place. There is sometimes the lack of security, that kind of thing. People not paying attention, not able to pay attention with what is happening, and then you may have the window of opportunity to escape and to get to another town. You may come into contact with somebody who might be helpful, in that sense, and assist you to cross the border and that sort of thing. So it all has to be fortunate circumstances.
Now, when you talk about 90 persons, because the number in the last article which came out of the Middle East, I claimed it was 25. When or how can you verify how many Trinidad and Tobago nationals are there?
Well, like I said, the only way we'll be able to verify those figures is, when I get that list, and that list specifically would be just the numbers in just one camp. We're trying to get, a list of names of persons in other camps. And Nafisa, as you know, would have been doing, similar works in this field in trying to get the list of names of all those persons who are actually in those camps and so on. And it's a very tedious task. But the thing about it is that what surprises me is that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, this present administration in particular, when anyone is killed in Syria, the special branch here, they visit the family almost immediately and informs the family of what took place in Syria with their family or their relative, or as the case may be. It's surprising that the government will know this and have this information, and they're coming and telling the nation that they are unaware of the numbers and they're unaware of who the individuals there and so on. They were given, since in 2017, they were given the names and a list of names and so on. Families have been contacting the Ministry of National Security on a continuous basis, all right, and been calling upon the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and nothing serious has been done. We've had a particular matter, a case that just recently in Germany that was concluded, where the government was actually, an action was filed against the government in Germany to repatriate people back into Germany, and they lost that case, and they had to bring back home their citizens in that country.
Is that an option that you all are going to consider at this time?
As a matter of fact, I'm in the process of doing exactly that. I've already spoken to our lawyers, and we are at the moment trying to get all the families together, and to go and sit with the lawyers to give the necessary instructions and so on. So we're in that process right now. I mean, the government is not giving us any choice in the matter. And they are continuously at the behest of the American embassy and the American government.
Now, do we know
conferences here regarding?
Do you know whether or not is it only women and children, or are there men as well who are desirous of returning?
There are some men, and some of the men, they are adamant that they are willing to accept their fate, as the case may be.
Because
But
you do
we have
understand,
to-
Mr. Abdullah, if you tell me that there are some men, we're talking about, and I'm not using a broad brush, but there are some women who have said that they simply followed their husbands and that they were obedient Muslim
I'm just
wives.
about to make that point. Yes. So we have to understand that a lot of these women were coerced in going to Syria. Some had no idea they were going there. Some had some idea that they were going to a Muslim country. Some had no idea at all. And some, they knew they were going. They knew they were going to try to be part of the Islamic State and to live in that community and what have you and so on. But what they did not know, all of them, they did not know the conditions under which circumstances were in Syria at the time. What was happening, that notion that they had that they were going to be paid $1,000 US and that sort of thing, those were all lies.
Yeah, but then you made a choice. Let me ask you this, Mr. Abdullah, but you made a choice. We're talking about adults. I mean, there are some children, but you made a choice to go, and then it's not what you've been promised. So now the state has to absorb the cost to return you home because it didn't turn out to be the land of paradise you thought it would be?
But we also have to take into consideration the circumstances that existed here in Trinidad and Tobago that would have encouraged and influenced people to make that decision. We have to accept blame ourselves, including the Muslim community, not just the government. But we all, as a people, needs to accept blame as well, because people leave countries and go to other countries because of circumstances in theirs. I mean, just a little while ago, you had two guests on your program talking about Venezuelans leaving Venezuela and coming to Trinidad. Why are they doing that? It's because of circumstances under which they are forced to live.
The Venezuelan people are starving and they can't find medical care. They're fleeing for survival. Are you saying that it's the same in Trinidad and Tobago, that people are fleeing to Syria for survival?
Well, I would not put it as blunt as that, survival, but when we look at the many instances in the past where Muslims have come under the attention of the media and so on, where a lot of Muslim women are being refused jobs in certain places because of the hijab that they're wearing, because of their religious affiliation and so on. Some men, they cannot get jobs. We have the situation where men, when they're released from prison, they can't get jobs. No businesses want to hire them, etc. Difficult to get their children in school. It's very difficult to get Muslim children in some of the non-Muslim schools and so on. Our Muslim schools are packed to capacity with students, across Trinidad and Tobago, and it's very difficult for a Muslim to even get into a Muslim school. So a lot of circumstances, and it's difficult to put food on your table. It's difficult when you go to the different Islamic institutions and you're not getting the assistance and you're not getting the support that you want. When you go to the government agencies, you're not getting these things.
Yeah, but Mr. Abdullah, that is not isolated and only limited to the Muslim faith. I can tell you that I have difficult times. Many groups can tell you that they face. It's a citizen thing.
Right.
Citizens can tell you that they are having difficulty in Trinidad and Tobago, but it's not necessarily that they will decide that I'm going to make a choice. Their citizens who pack up and they go to the U.S., they pack up and they go to other parts to work.
I hear you, and I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. But let's take, for instance, the non-Muslims. When they're having problems in this country, they have other countries that they would go to that will well fit within their lifestyle. They'll go to America, they'll go to Europe, they'll go to different countries, right? We have some of them who can't leave. They resort to crime, right? Look at our crime situation in this country. And the Muslims who can afford to leave, obviously they will choose to go to a Muslim country or to a country that will fit their lifestyle and so on. And when the Islamic State or the ISIS people had established and indicated that they have established an Islamic State, a lot of Muslims would have wanted to be part of that.
No, I want to return again because I know we're against time. We're looking at the fact that you're saying that there may be as much as 90 citizens out there. You have also the security concern because you have men and women who are exposed to a particular state and an ideology which may lend itself in some instances to violence and to extremism and to extreme trends of thought. They may have also been exposed to networks who have been flagged as national security risks. How do you expect the government to simply embrace, open their arms? How are we going to find the balance?
I previously had sent out a release indicating and suggesting what the government should do. And I've suggested that the government set up a special task force, which include all sectors of the society, military, police, government, civil society, to actually set up the mechanism that would be needed to receive these persons back into the country. I mean, just recently, the government has given the green light for criminals from Venezuela to come into Trinidad.
Well, that's not necessarily...
What measures did they have in place to detect whether somebody in Venezuela was a criminal or not?
Well, they did have the registration process, and they did attempt to screen them, so it's not right to say that we allow criminals in the country.
Right, but the registration process did not, speak to that, right? We've seen where there are crimes being committed by Venezuelans here in this country. And we know the crime levels in Venezuela is much greater than the crime levels here in Trinidad and Tobago. And what they're capable of, we are not capable of it. But anyway, that's a different conversation.
That's an ideological conversation about terrorism and where you sympathize.
We as a country could set up the mechanisms to receive these persons back in. And those who have come back already.
Are they fearful for their lives? Is it that they are telling you that I am fearful for my life? What are they? What is their condition currently? Are they starving? Because they're in a Kurdish...
They're starving, they're fearful for their lives because, remember, these individuals who have escaped, there are pro-ISIS people on the ground. Mm-hmm. And if they know these women and children who have spoken out against ISIS. So if they see them on the outside, they're most likely going to be killed. And then there's the other question of, the Kurdish forces. There are many factions among the Kurdish forces. There are the Sunnis, there are the Shiites, and also there are the Yazidis. The Yazidis, they don't attach themselves to no religion at all right? And there is a possibility that some of our nationals could be sold as slaves to other countries, like Iran and so on. Isn't the government thinking about this? What about the persons the family members who are in Trinidad? Look at that woman who was crying last night on television. Look at the hurt. Do you think that woman
What do you think is the hesitation? Is it when you say the government isn't thinking about this? Could it be that national security interests are overriding the government's concern at this time? That the concern for the majority, if I were to open the lines in a couple minutes and ask people about the possible return of these nationals, which you are saying could be up to 90 men and women and children, they're all going to say that they are fearful because there is a level of fear that perpetrates the conversation and the dialogue, particularly with persons who have been...
Because that's the rhetoric. That's the rhetoric. Mm-hmm. Recently, we saw there was a conference of some sort where at the behest of the American government again to talk about terrorism. Come on, man. Do we have terrorism here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, we have had bombings and we don't know.
That's what we have. All those individuals have come back from Syria. Not one of them have even broken a traffic light in this country. So what are you fearful of? And I'm saying, I'm talking here from a level of experience, right? And dealing with these issues and a number of other issues as it relates to violence and crime and so on. We have the capability of putting mechanisms in place to address these things and to treat with our citizens in a manner in which that we would reduce the anger and the hate and the injustices that is meted out on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And you have to agree, any country where there's injustices and a high level of injustice, there cannot be peace in that country. You are setting yourself up for a fall. The government needs to understand. Pay attention to your people. Listen to the cries of your people.
Now, Mr. Abdullah, I know we're running out of time for this interview, but you used the word injustice. And let me just tell you what the sentiment is. I've seen the images. I interviewed the journalist who put the story on the Middle East Eye. We had him on the phone via Skype the other day. But you talk about injustices, but then to many, they're looking at your trend of thoughts and your logic on this, because these persons, and I'm not saying all, because some of the women said that they were simply being obedient wives. They didn't know what they were going to.
Yeah.
But then you have many persons who use the word injustice and that they're escaping for a better life. They've then decided to go to Syria, and that better life did not materialize. In fact, it's a war-torn country where the promises that were made would not materialize, because we know that there's a war on the Islamic State and that ideology for the group and those associated with that group. So if I go somewhere and it's not the way that I turned out, do I simply get to return with no consequences, or no, you know, because that's really what people are looking at. Like, you made a choice to go, now you want us to come back. What do you want to say to that?
So are we saying there's no room for retribution? There's no room for change? There's no room for a person to realize, well, okay, I had the wrong thought process before I left Trinidad and Tobago, and when I come back, this is what needs to be done. This is what I perhaps have to do. I mean, I am willing to assist. I am willing to help. I am willing to rally the Muslim community together and put these mechanisms in place.
Is this your fight alone, or is the entire Muslim community sharing your sentiment? Do they believe that these persons should come home? Do they identify them as Muslims, and the Muslims in the ideology? Because there are Muslims who condemn violence and any form of violence and any form of...
I'm one of them. I'm one of them. And but the majority of Muslims have that sentiment. They may not come out and say it openly.
So do they all believe that we should repatriate the possible 90 persons that you're talking about?
Of course, that's the sentiment, right? And I'm not saying that because for saying it's sake, right? I've been on the ground. I've been talking to Muslims. I've been talking to Muslim leaders, the scholars, all of them, and they all share the same sentiment. But what needs to happen is that we need to put in place those mechanisms. And as a country that is developing and is growing, and you know, having to deal with all the changing dynamics in the world, this is a period for us to grasp and to better, you know, prepare ourselves and hope that this is going to develop us into a nation that's second to none in this region.
Well, we can all hope for
are running away from the responsibilities of taking care of our citizens. And these persons, international law, right? You cannot, these persons cannot be stateless.
Well, Mr. Abdullah, I know we're out of time for this interview, and I know that this story. So can you give us an idea as to when the legal action will be filed? You say at this time you may follow the route
within the next couple of weeks. We're trying to get all the families together as much as we can, those families who are here. And, you know, we're moving forward in that
And in your estimate, it could be up to 90 persons that are trapped in Syria?
Yes, in my estimate, yeah.
Sure. Mr. Abdullah, I do appreciate you taking our call this morning and sharing your thoughts on this matter as we continue to follow this story. It's a developing story. Umar Abdullah there saying that he intends to explore legal options at this time to force the state to repatriate citizens who are trapped in Syria. Now, also know, some of these women have said that they were tricked and that they were not told. There's a story of Felicia, who's a mother who traveled all the way to Syria to rescue her 2 sons. But her story is one. One article estimates that 25 citizens are trapped in Syria. Another, according to Umar Abdullah, it could be as much as 90. The government has remained relatively silent on this, and we're going to continue to follow this story as it develops. So take a short break. When we come back, and remind you as to how you can get involved in our conversation. Also, we'll share with you some videos that are trending. Did you see that Charlotte Street is now the Chinatown of Trinidad and Tobago? Stay with us.